A floating blob of seaweed, nearly twice as wide as the United States, is headed for Florida and Mexico. And communities are bracing for some seriously stinky problems. Sargassum is a brown seaweed that appears seasonally in the Atlantic and makes up floating masses.
And they float because they have these little air bladders that make them buoyant.
In open water, the tangled mess is relatively harmless and even has some benefits. Hundreds of species of fish and other wildlife call this floating reef home.
So they're a good thing when they're out in the open ocean, but when they come ashore in excessive amounts, that's when it becomes too much of a good thing.
Once the blobs move closer to land, that's when it starts to have serious problems. By smothering turtle nests, damaging coral, and piling up in heaps on beaches. But that's not all.
Not only does it impact humans, just for appearance, but also as it rots, it releases hydrogen sulfide, the rotten egg smell.
Rotten egg smell. That's a non-starter for a day at the beach, and it is a health risk.
And the problem is getting bigger.
Since 2011, it's grown huge. It's easily observable from satellites now. And each year it seems to be getting a little bit bigger.
This year's bloom is one of the largest ever, spreading 5,000 miles long and can even be seen from space. So what's causing this?
This is the largest algae bloom on Earth. There are a lot of moving parts, but what we do know, the Mississippi River, the Congo, the Amazon, the Orinoco, all these major rivers around this great circulation of sargassum in the Atlantic Basin, their nitrogen content is going up and their nitrogen to phosphorus ratio is going up. So the seasonal growth cycle of sargassum does parallel that of the nutrient discharges from these rivers.
But how did we get here? Where are these nutrients coming from, and why is this happening now?
I like to think of it as a combination of global change, which is the human population growth and, the production of nutrients from human activities.
Let's break that down, because over the last century, global population has skyrocketed, and that wasn't just some fluke thing that happened.
We have the Haber-Bosch process, over a century ago now, that allowed us to feed the growing world population.
This invention made fertilizer widely available, which helped farmers grow a lot of food.
So roughly 2 out of every 5 people, would not be here were it not for the development of the Haber-Bosch process.
Not only does a larger population require more farming, which leads to more fertilizer use, it also leads to more human sewage, which is basically another type of fertilizer. So when it rains, those extra nutrients make their way into the water, sparking algae growth.
Climate change is playing a role because as the seas warm, we get more evaporation and we're seeing more extreme weather, particularly rainfall, where we get tremendous amounts of runoff from these rivers. Everything from a septic tank in your backyard to major agricultural areas or industrial sources into that coastal ocean where it can be accessed by sargassum.
While more research is needed, this could explain the increase in blooms. So what happens now? Are we doomed to drown in stinky brown seaweed?
Well, we definitely need more research. That's kind of the long term. I think we're going to see a number of spin-ups, in companies looking for beneficial uses. In Mexico and maybe other parts of the Caribbean, there's so much of it, they're making bricks out of it to turn what is really becoming a pollution problem on these beaches to a resource that can be used.